Privilege often skews our worldview. Now, before we move into the point I'm making, let me define privilege first. If you have a smartphone that's paid for, an active internet plan, and you're sorted for your next meal, you have privilege. You might think you're poor because you don't go abroad for holidays, but you are not poor. Hi, I'm Ian Panda, and I'm going to tell you how your privilege stops you from seeing the things for how they really are. I've been staying in Guwahati for the last few years. There's a rather busy road here called the Beltola Basista Road. In this road, there's a crossing that never has a traffic signal. People drive haphazardly and create a lot of jams, which could be easily avoided. And then this one time, there was a brand new traffic light there. I was very happy about it. I told my wife, see, that's our tax dollars at work. Until like 2 days later, I was driving by and I realized the traffic lights were gone. People were back to driving haphazardly and creating jams. When I asked the traffic police about it, he informed me that the traffic lights here are usually stolen by the locals and sold off as scrap. In my head, I cursed these people for not realizing how their petty actions were affecting public convenience. I thought to myself, what can the government do when people behave like this? This reminded me of how those steel mugs in train bathrooms are often chained up so that nobody steals them. I had always wondered how people lack such basic civic sense. Having grown up with a roof over my head, I could never empathize with people who steal things like this. I just thought they were thieves. It took me a while to realize that people who were stealing amenities like this were not really crooks, but rather people who were really hard strapped for cash. People so desperate that they resorted to such petty thefts. It was either that or begging on the streets. And to be honest, if I was in that situation, I would choose theft or suicide before I chose begging. Now, because people like you and me grow up thinking we are poor, we barely understand what poverty really means. Hunger and the desperation born from it are merely theoretical concepts for us. But for a huge chunk of the society, hunger is a real challenge that they face every day. The government might have changed the definition of poor to show that they have uplifted so many people above the poverty line, but the reality on ground is different. This numeric manipulation does nothing to the situation on ground. Boasting about every villager having phones, which were most probably bought on EMIs that they were struggling to pay and was sending them into a deeper debt trap, instead of educating people and trying to change their situation, is the sign of a short-sighted administrator. What more could the government do? I mentioned education, but the people who work in the education sector will tell you that a major hurdle in India's primary education is the systemic poverty that exists in households, which in turn makes getting children to school a real challenge. Governments in the past have introduced a lot of plans and procedures to improve access to education for the masses. As a result, the teachers in government schools have become implicit executors of government's plans and schemes, taking away their focus from their core responsibility, teaching. There's a clear solution there, but it needs money. We have to hire more people to approach basic education in a more efficient manner. People to conduct outreach in the society and get more children to school. People to teach and separate people to govern. This would need a serious bump in the education budget. And all of this would still not be enough if the extreme poverty levels in the society are not dealt with. And that would need an increase in welfare spending. It's all related to each other. The point I'm trying to make here is, if you want to sustainably improve the condition of the society, you have to make considerable investment in welfare and education. Only then can we hope to make things better in the decades to come. And this is where the whole privilege and worldview topic that I started the video with plays a role. Recently, when Rahul Gandhi talked about direct cash transfers to BPL families, we saw how people reacted to it. One common reaction was that if you give people free money, they'll stop working, become lazy. This showed how oblivious the privileged people are to the plight of the poor. Even my reaction to learning about people stealing traffic lights and steel mugs was derision instead of empathy first. That's because most of us have no frame of reference for poverty. But do you know what percentage of the population we make up? I mean the privileged people? 30%. This means that 70% of the people in this country live in conditions that we can't even imagine. And yet, we can't stop cribbing about how our tax money brings us no real benefits. The privileged lot show a unique lack of understanding about how taxes are used by the government. I have said this in multiple occasions, but I will say it again. The whole ecosystem that enables you to earn a living and live comfortably was built by the taxes that others paid. The fact that you can step out of your house without the fear of being robbed is ensured by the police, paid for by the taxes collected by the government. The market where you invest your money and see it grow was set up by the taxes that the government collected. The company you work for exists because the basic infrastructure that allows companies to operate existed, again, built with the taxes collected by the government. So the taxes you pay are not an imposition. They are what you owe to the government and the society. Now coming back to the fact that privilege skews our perspective, let us analyze it in the context of Dhruv Rathi criticizing the Mumbai-Ahmedabad bullet train project. The gist of what Rathi asked was, do we really need to spend so much money on bullet train here? Couldn't we use the money better? For context, the bullet train project was initially supposed to cost 1.08 lakh crore rupees to the Indian exchequer. But after several delays to the project, it is now estimated to cost over 2 lakh crore rupees. Hundreds of meme pages started attacking Dhruv Rathi's statements. But the simple fact is that basic infrastructure is not sorted in the areas between Mumbai and Ahmedabad. A small percentage of privileged people who are criticizing Dhruv Rathi's statement believe that a bullet train is a real requirement here, whereas the less privileged folks would rather have a better and more accessible railway, better roads, and better healthcare before they can start thinking about bullet trains. And all of this can be done with the lakhs and crores of rupees allocated to these vanity projects. Vanity projects like the Vande Bharat and the Statue of Unity. And now, the bullet train. Now, it is a hard fact that it is the affluent and privileged who run governments. Even when India got its independence, the lawmakers were generally a more privileged bunch than the rest of us. But still, they governed the country well because they empathized with the poor. Their approach was aimed at the masses and not at the top 1%. That is called vision, something the Modi administration seems to lack, because the Modi government's policies have been focused on making the rich richer, instead of doing anything substantial to uplift the masses. When asked about this, the Prime Minister smugly said this in an interview.
प्रधानमंत्री जी, हाल ही में अंतर्राष्ट्रीय अर्थशास्त्रियों की एक रिपोर्ट आई टॉमस पिकेटी की, जिसमें उन्होंने कहा कि भारत में इनकम इनइक्वालिटी बढ़ रही है, यानी कि जो लोग अमीर हैं वो और अमीर होते जा रहे हैं, जो गरीब हैं वो और गरीब होते जा रहे हैं, कि भारत की इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ इस वक्त के शेप्ड है कि ऊपर लोग अमीर हो रहे हैं और नीचे लोग गरीब हो रहे हैं. आप इसको कैसे देखते हैं, जो इनकम इनइक्वालिटी का विषय?
तो क्या सबके सब गरीब होने चाहिए?
अमीर ज़्यादा होने चाहिए.
We already know from past research and evidence that the idea that industrial growth will also uplift the poor is a flawed one. But it is not just the lawmakers that need a different perspective. It is also the people. Because ultimately, it is the people who get and keep lawmakers in power. People like us, the ones with privilege, should be open to welfare activities instead of looking at it from our extremely narrow point of view. I went to a convent school. My graduation was paid for. Doesn't mean that I can scoff at the idea of free education or increased budget spending on it. You can afford quality healthcare because you have a health insurance and enough money to pay for it. Doesn't mean you would oppose more spending on the improvement of public healthcare infrastructure. These are the needs of the many and they far outweigh the needs of the few. And believe it or not, you and I, we are the few. So while you and I might think that India needs Vande Bharat and bullet train, what India really needs is more accessible railways. While you and I might think that freebies are an unnecessary burden on the taxpayer, the majority of the country need these benefits to make ends meet. While you and I might believe that India's military expenditure is justified, the fact is that our country really needs to improve the life of its people rather than being a military power. And hence the education budget can be increased at the expense of defense budget, to a small extent at the least. Are these ideas too radical? You let me know in the comment section. And if you like this video, make sure to like it and share it with your privileged friends.